Bam.
This is Roy Reid, and I'm watching the Break It Down show.
Me too. It's going to be fun. We're having a good time. It's the professional world that we work in, which is a big world. You can be hyper famous and successful in one gigantic pillar of knowledge and in business, and have 99.9% of the world never hear of you, and I love it that in my show, I can like open the door to your lobby and be like, what do you do here? And we can have these incredible conversations. And then it turns out we're both purveyors of trust. And I'm dying to see how you use trust to your advantage, what you teach people about it. Because look, I used to be a spy. And rather than deceive, I go the opposite way. I'm like, how do I build trust with these people? Because if I build trust with them in my kind of spying, it was essential, and it unlocked my ability to get miles ahead of my peers. My peers are all awesome, but I could out-collect them because I was focused on exchanging trust, reliably testing that, and building up my relationships with the people that I needed to do things with. And those things are dangerous things. So let's talk about your beginning of realizing that trust was essential for business.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be able to talk to you and to your audience as well. The genesis for this journey for me began when I was a partner in a public relations firm. And I really wanted people to understand more than anything else, we should be building trust. That the outcome of any work that we did should be improving trust with people. And back then there wasn't a whole lot of resource to look at and find that. And so as I began to embark on the journey, some of the things that I discovered, at least the things that seemed to jump out at me, was too many people looked at trust as kind of this one big ambiguous thing, when in fact it's a lot of little things that we do every day. And probably the biggest mistake anybody makes in the relationship when it comes to trust is assuming it and not being intentional about it. And oftentimes we don't set out to deceive or do something, but every day we're going to do things that challenge or even break trust with people. And we have to be prepared for that. And the more intentional we are in building it and modifying how that looks and tending to it on a day-to-day basis, the more likely we are to retain it when we do make a mistake.
Let's work right there. In my line of work, sales, being a reporter, a lot of different things that the first thing you got to do is establish rapport. All right. After you establish, and they don't even like stop and like, well, how do you do that? How do you know when you have it? Before you can ever have trust, you have to have some kind of rapport. And just because you make a bad first impression, that doesn't, in business, that doesn't mean you get to give up. I made a bad first impression. I'm never going to talk to that person again. So you've got to deal with rapport. And this is how Pete sees it, right? So you tell me how you see it. By the way, Brad's down below. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Rapport as a gateway to trust. What are your thoughts? And then how do you build reliably and repeatedly?
That's a great question. And it really opens up sort of the foundational idea behind this idea of trust being the combination of a lot of things. One of the areas we start with is that it's really based on emotion and experience, right? So when you talk about rapport, you think about walking into the room. Over time, you'll earn the trust by the things that you do, but that first impression is going to be made based on the emotional connection you make with somebody. And even as you think about your most trusted relationships, there's a high level of emotion that's attached to that. But over time, it's even deepened by the experiences that you have with one another. And so I always say that, that first impression, it matters. It makes it easier to build trust or harder to build trust, depending on what happens in that engagement. But it is that part of your personality, your attitude, that walks in the room first and sets the tone for everything else that's going to happen. And so as we look at that, we really lean into that idea first, and we can break it down into some smaller pieces as we carry on the conversation. But you're absolutely right. That rapport starts with how that engagement begins at an emotional level.
when I mock my peers and my military peers, we tend to simplify things. Like we take all this care to put a round 300 yards downrange,
Mm,
a quarter inch across, and hit something that's man-sized. That is
mm,
not an easy task. But we act like you can reliably walk into a meeting and establish rapport,
right.
having never thought about any aspect of it, right? And you and I both know, like, that's just patently ridiculous to
Yeah.
think that it's that simple. Pete would say affect is greater than effect. If I can get
Mm,
the emotional response somewhere in the zone of where I want it to be,
mhm,
then I'm way ahead of the guy. And the way I illustrate this is if I go in and I'm focused on affect, and using affect as a noun, if you go in and say, I'm going to get this girl to like me, I'm going to write her 15 love letters, I'm going to be in her pants before you because I'm not going to worry about, I might write a love letter, but I'm looking for an emotional response to what I'm putting out. And you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to go slow. You have to be, because if you get that emotional connection, and you just alluded to it, then boy, oh boy, you're off to the races. If you're getting the right one, if you're not getting the right one, at least then you know to pivot and adjust, try again, pivot, adjust, try again. But Pete is a big believer in affect over effect because it's
mm.
easy to pull out your how do I build rapport? As part of the rapport building process, I will now relate to you one story about my upbringing. I am from California and I like to wear hats. Now that we've completed the rapport building process, we will now move into, it's like you
Right.
can't do that. I mean, unless you're making a joke like I am. Now that I might establish rapport by being direct and obvious about my stupid card, but not if you're really doing this well, you're taking the time to understand how to build a good first impression, not worrying about it once you know how to do it, because worrying about making an impression in the right way is one of the worst ways to make a good impression. I'm
Mhm.
going to shut up now. And I swear I'm going to get Brad in here in a second, but I wanted to throw affect to an effect. And how do you break down rapport? How do you, what are the steps?
One of the things that we talk about is that, you know, really transformational trust is built on four attributes that you have. That begins with being trustworthy, then authentic, dependable, and then the fourth is the idea of the impact that you have when you earn that trust. Right? It's that gift of trust, which is influence. And so, to talk a little bit about starting at trustworthy is not trusted. It's congratulations, you've earned the right to be trusted. We really lean into things like integrity, how you manage yourself, how you trust yourself, and the things that you do internally to develop, practice, create routines around, and really live into that high level of ethical behavior and consistency in what you do. And then the second is what I mentioned earlier, which is that attitude, which those two really go hand in hand in that first impression that you're making. But what else really magnifies it is the third aspect of this idea of being trustworthy, which is focus. What are you focused on? Are you focused on the right person, the right thing right now? Because if you're not, you don't get that engagement. And we're living in a time where having that engagement can be so much more difficult because so much of what we do is virtual. We don't get together physically and in person as much as we did anymore. And so there's a loss of that kind of engagement that happens. But focus is another one. Having the right insights, taking initiative, all of these things together really comprise what is that first level of being trustworthy, which is the first step in the four attributes that we talk about in the book and the program.
Yeah. Brad, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Hey, I feel really untrustworthy by not wearing a hat today. So it was.
Well, I don't have a headset on, so
It's yeah, right. Well, who do we not trust here? I think the only person we can trust is Pete. That's what we've decided here.
That's right.
I'm thinking, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking about one of the really awkward things I do, and of course, I've been a remote guy for most of my career. Going back, I know it doesn't look it, but going back 35 years, I've been a remote guy, either on the phone or I'll pop into your office or whatever else. I don't occupy a lot of space in your office. I'm not there for the chit chat that kind of exposes you for who you are. So one of the awkward things I do on calls, and I know it's awkward because nobody else does this, and they're always taken aback when I do it, is I'll just stop in the middle and I'll say, does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Have I earned your trust here? What am I doing to fall short of this? It's very explicit, and it's definitely against like the rules of common how we do things, is to stop and take an explicit evaluation of the trust situation, or to stop and offer the same. What do you think about that in the mix of it, especially with, here we are, online, we're not, we can't smell who showered today.
Right.
We can't quite tell what the real attitude of the person is. You see these blinds closed behind me. You don't see the dogs jumping up on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, look, that's a great illustration of the intentionality we talked about, right? You're fully engaged with that other person, and you're really looking for them to give you that validation that the trust is being earned. Because again, if you assume it and you get so far down the way and you haven't made that connection, it's going to go off the rails anyways. And so I love that intentionality. I love just that whole idea of taking a moment to really gauge the temperature of where it is right now.
Without, of course, getting it, drawn into, let's talk about the relationship, right? That goes off the deep end too. The thing is, can we do this for a second? Can we just take the temperature, write it down?
Yeah.
Continue on with what we're doing.
Now, and I would imagine that over the course of that time that you described, you find that more often than not, you're able to move the ones off the plate that aren't going in that right direction, and then stay focused on the ones that are in that place and that you are building that relationship with.
I hope to know the answer to that question before I ask it. It's a reinforcement question rather than a discovery question, but it needs to, your authenticity thing. It does need to come off as an authentic question. Hey, I'm taking a temperature right now just to see where we are.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I like your framework for that.
Thank you.
That's nice.
When we look at getting to the rapport stage and you have that easy conversation, Pete would say, if you're in a setting like with a sheikh or someone from another culture, it's important also to slow down a little bit. We want to just skip across the rocks and be like, I'm on the other side of and now you say, but you're not, because there's a lot of things that are nuanced. And I think the biggest, this is Pete talking from my experience, I want to hear what you have to say, and feel free to disagree. The biggest thing that I can bring to get in the way of that intentionality and that authentic nature, bring my goals, to bring my needs out first. Like if we're having chai, if I'm at my best, all I'm going to do is have chai. And I refuse to ask a question based upon my need professionally before you. I'm going to wait you out. Now, look, down the road, when we have rapport, we're way past that. We have trust. We have a general bond. Okay, great. We might get right. But before that, your business is making friends, is going slow, is drinking chai, is giving a compliment. And not to be disingenuous or inauthentic, but to say it's appropriate to say, hey, this is great chai. Where do you get it? Or something like that, so that person can now be a good host. You can be a good guest. And these things, for Pete's point of view, give you a plateau to stand on that's higher than the regular, I'm here to, and then now I will read from my trust building card, right? I'm going to look at it and go, you want to tell me what's great about your culture. You want to tell me the best things and the worst things, and you want to open up a little bit. And if I can get that person emotional and talking in a genuine way, I'm going to be miles ahead of my peers that are working off of a card or are afraid of making a hand gesture and offending someone. I'm going to use culture to my advantage, and I'm going to use curiosity to my advantage. And these are going to give me these authenticity tools that you're talking about. So says Pete.
No, I think Pete's on the right track. What I would add to that is I look at those types of conversations and those types of engagement through the lens of the phrase, what can I do to help you? Right. And I find that if I start there, then it opens up so many things. And I'm not selling. I'm not looking to jump right back in as soon as they say something and say, here's what it is. What I'm doing is showing general concern for what's important to them. let them define what the course of that conversation is going to look like. And I'm going to build a whole lot more trust by unpacking that, and by judging at the end of the conversation, I feel it's been most productive the less I talk.
Yes.
And the more you eat and the more you drink.
Well, always.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
but to your point, a lot of people will get into these moments and they rush to the ask. And so they're not engaging that person with real authentic care and concern. They're not engaging them under that idea of earning the trust, right?
Oh, yeah. Right.
It's you should assume, again, they assume it, and they run right past the opportunity to develop that relationship. And the other part of this too, and this, is over time, any transaction in a relationship is so much less important than the value of that relationship in other aspects of our lives.
Yeah. That's a big thing you're talking about. And you just said, and that's a great tool to genuinely say, I recognize that you have capabilities in this zone. That's why I'm saying Pete says this. Normally I don't talk in third person, but I'm trying to give a perspective of, I know that how Roy approaches this. And I know that Brad from the computer world is trying to humanize the things they do. And so he's also doing things that are focused on building trust. When we're trying to build trust, these things, this space of the relationship is really the predominant thing. Because if you get too fast, if you get too focused on self, you're going to put yourself in a place where you don't control how you're being perceived. You haven't taken the time to get to the point where you can ask. In my line of work, it's very dangerous to work with me because you're talking to an American. And if people find out that I'm a spy and they decide that you are spying, all of a sudden it's real. So I have to be very deliberate about how I do this and not hide things and be honest and open. That's how I do it. Other people in my field don't do it that way. But if I don't build that trust and then test that trust, and I look at trust like a credit account. I am the one interloping into your school district to sell you computer systems. I am the one coming to your country to help you build the government or wherever it's going to be. So it's on me to say, I am here. I'm going to extend you this low risk trust. Is it possible to meet with me? Yes, great. And this is an Army guy in a combat zone saying, should you set the date and time or should I? How do you guys do this? And when they say, I'll set the date and time, I am now extending them a pretty lethal amount of trust. So I can't start there. I've got to start with smaller, low risk trust that I can exchange with them. And if they're giving it back to me, we worked on my credit of I'm going to extend it first. And now I know that I've got something that's there. And then I might even be so blunt as to say, you want me to meet you on your terms. Gosh, that goes against my Army stuff. That might get me in trouble. How do we deal with this? And then just be open about that process and say, you are protected by my shakily nature. Nothing will harm you, And so now I've got to decide if I trust that or not. And hopefully I've done the work to build up the relationship and the exchange of trust so that I can do that dangerous thing because I've got the power of culture now. When that sheikh says, put you under his protection, you're under his protection. And those guys don't trade that lightly, but you have to know that going in and know that you can get to that spot. How am I doing?
Good. No, you're touching on a lot of the areas that we spend time on in training and in helping people develop as we talk to their teams or to the CEO, leader of the organization, because part of what you just outlined is creating that space with somebody where you're showing respect, right? So in authenticity, there's some ingredients just like there are in the idea of being trustworthy. First of all, is having clarity of what the relationship is, right? Every relationship's unique. Work relationships are unique from home and personal relationships. And so we've got to engage people and know what that looks like and have clarity what the boundaries are, what the areas of interest need to be and what we need to attend to and what we don't need to attend to. And then when we have that clarity, we exercise and show respect to that person. And again, I love the idea of asking that question from time to time, or making sure that the conversation stays in the space that it needs to. The other thing in these authentic relationships over time is we can develop relationships that have true candor, the ability to speak honestly and truthfully about everything. And that's such a valuable component of real meaningful relationships that we have. It's
such
few
a
and far
time
between.
saver.
Yeah.
It's a time saver to like just not having to beat around the bush about something.
Yes.
Just be able to say, hey, this is really how it is. Save yourself an hour right there.
Well, and I can count so many times in my life where somebody stepped in and said, hey, this is not going to be comfortable for me to tell you, but this is what you're doing. You know, those people have saved me time and again, and probably thousands, if not millions of dollars over the years of not doing stupid stuff.
Yeah. There's something to be said about not doing stupid stuff. One of the dumb things you can do is, again, bring yourself and your assumptions to answers to a sales meeting or to a reporter trying to talk to a source.
Yeah.
And if you come in there and so this is Pete talking about this, but if I don't know how you make your decisions, and if I don't know what your goals are, I'm going to presume you want to save money on my software. And so I might focus there initially, but really what you want is someone, you know, like one of the biggest things in my relationships with business is a human going to talk to me? And if it's not, I may still do business with you, but I'm very apt to leave the second I can, because you're replaceable to me. I can find robots everywhere to talk to, right? And so if I jumped to cost, well, now I've because I don't mind paying a premium to talk to someone and to know that when I have a problem, you're going to help me fix it. You're not going to tell me no. You're not going to say it's your job to be customer service, because that's all of that is going to get you fired from my business. I'm going to so understanding what's important to me and how I make my decisions is going to enable you to better get what you want from me, and for me to trust you, because I need to know that you are going to be there if I ever need you.
I think another thing here is trust, relationships, everything else, they're two-way, right? So if I'm selling to you, right, on paper, I'm trying to get you to trust me. At the same time, I need to give you an opportunity to earn my trust as well.
Yep.
So that it reinforces. And, you know, if it's just a one-way trust thing, trust me, and I don't know what you're doing, I don't know what your point is or whatever else, the trust, it may have been earned, but it has no purpose. I have no way to direct it. And so I need to give you that.
No, please finish.
You know, getting back to the eating together example, I think of an example 25 years ago. I was hired as the first U.S. employee of a Danish database made, like they were like Oracle, but really, really small and never got big, of a Danish database maker. And one of the things that they hired quite a few people that were outside of Denmark. That's what a lot of Danish companies do, because Denmark is just, this very insulated place. You know, you land in Copenhagen and you drive around in a taxi and you see all these like absolutely stunningly beautiful men and women riding around on bicycles. They're totally fit. It's the same way today as it was 25 years ago, as it was 50 years ago. Wow. It's like this magical place, but they import all these people, or they try to establish relationships with all these people. And the first thing you do, you show up and they've got all sorts of food for you. And they got all sorts of things to drink. They drink like all these Danish things. And all you have to do is try it. They will never offer you anything bad. I was always surprised at how many of my colleagues that weren't from Denmark and came to visit were hesitant. Like, you can't be hesitant. This is the first test. Are you one of us, or are you, like one of them, and you're going to remain one of them? You got to step up and do it, and then like, you're not even thinking about trust at that point. Right. You're just thinking about, hey, I'm going to be here 2 weeks. I'm going to be miserable if I'm not having fun, if I'm not enjoying the food, if I'm not enjoying drinking with these people, if I'm not enjoying whatever they do, So that's
that really does speak again to intentionality, right? You do your homework, knowing where you're walking into and what the expected norms are going to be. I've had I've had the opportunity to travel and do business in other places around the world. And And in each location, there's a unique expectation for how you engage and what that looks like. And you've got to get it right. Or you find yourself not achieving and doing the things that you were set out to do. So that,
or if you're totally clueless, just ask, right? I mean,
yeah.
Hey, I'm not familiar with the situation. What am I supposed to do here? What do you want me to do? All right, let's do it. Right? Same kind of thing.
Yeah, humility is a big part of this too. Being able to recognize when you aren't the expert, when you don't have the information. Are you smart enough to take a step back and ask the question?
Yeah. Well, I would say if you're not making mistakes, you're making the first mistake. Right? You should be comfortable being uncomfortable, because trust requires some level of, I call it miscomfort, because you learn what is comfortable and you find out that it's fine to not know, to be a little plodding, to not just go racing straight for the solution, because the path is a critical path. It's not a path of least resistance when it comes to culture and trust. And if you can't put those two lenses on in terms of how you act and see things, then you'll have a problem. One of the tools that I've developed is when you hear negative values. Brad just gave it a great example of this, where those people are stupid. These people are lazy. They're incompetent. They're thieves. They're greedy. They're all these negative things. That is an incongruence with culture. And you don't understand something about their goals. You don't understand something about how they make decisions. And that's an opportunity, because now you can go and you can ask these questions about them, or you can communicate your version of that, because there's a flip side to that conversation. Oh, they don't understand my goals. Let me spend time drinking tea and talking about why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And that, man, it is, when you unlock that, it's like rocket fuel for relationships. Because now I'm not worried. Again, I'm not worried about my needs, my goals. If I can accomplish my task, even 80% of it on their cultural path, if I'm getting a B-, my boss is going to love it, because I'm doing it in their way. And I'm solving problems that they couldn't solve before. I'm not forcing someone to go do something my way. Again, how am I doing here?
Well, you're right on. And I'll give you an anecdote from early in my career that, this kind of thing happens everywhere, right? And so I had come into an organization as their director of communications, and we were going through the budgeting process. And I'm the new guy, so I get to ask all the new guy dumb questions. And so I'm going down the list of all the executives in the company asking, so what do they think about the budgeting process? And I get to the chief operating officer, and almost in unison, the team looks at me and says, well, he doesn't understand us. He doesn't care about what we do. And just on and on and on and on. And I said, well, I went to my boss. I said, who meets with him? And nobody did. They assumed all of this. And so I set up a meeting with the COO, very busy man, very young at the time. I had a 30-minute meeting. He was running 15 minutes late. I ended up getting 10 minutes to say, hi, I'm your new communications director. And so I walked out the door after that and set up a meeting the next week. And then the following week. And I kept going back. And most of the first, say, 5 of those meetings was really me educating him on all of what I did and what I was working on, and giving him updates that he might not have always heard. And we were kind of the early warning system of bad stuff that might be happening down the road. Ultimately, that meeting became a weekly 2-hour Friday morning meeting. And at some point during the process, he asked me to be the person who would kick off and lead his leadership meetings. And over time, we were able to manage a whole lot better during crisis times, because there was a direct connect to that office. And all it took was an introductory meeting and listening and engaging. And so everything you just described follows that pattern, right? Is whether it's groups of people, countries, or otherwise, how are we engaging? And are we engaging to build the relationship? Or are we just there for the transaction and then we're out?
Yeah.
And
It's what one of the key factors in what I'm doing, right? I've got to go into the villages, and I've got to talk to those folks, and I've got to build their trust. I also have to build trust within my unit. So it's an equation that I have to balance. And if I can get the unit to behave better in town, then I'm bringing value to town. Simultaneously, I'm bringing value back to the unit because they're not having to work less hard. They're working more precisely. And I'm saying less hard at like failing, right? Like stop failing as much. And so when I'm talking to a commander, I'm telling them like, I'm going to give you these things. I'm not really worried about the bombs and bullets. Get you some of that, but really what you want me to do is help make you guys more efficient in town so that you can win more. And once I have that commander's trust, I'm simultaneously trying to build the trust of the staff. Same thing. They don't want me undermining their process. They don't want me. And so there's a guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of Robin Dreeke. He's also a counterintelligence agent like I was. He was in the FBI, and he writes books about trust building. And he was talking about how he was advising an FBI team that was trying to get an operation off the ground. And this is all intra FBI. And so they had a guy from their squad that had got promoted up. And they're like, well, he'll just rubber stamp this thing because it's us. And he didn't. And so Robin's like, well, you have to understand, he has a different job now. And he has got trust to build to up, and he's got a different responsibility. So let's spend time and figure out where that person is at so we can better understand what they need. We already have this emotional connection, but that person's for their career, right? Like sometimes we think it's about a purchase order. Like, no, my career is on the line. I've got to get this done right. And if you're going to help me do this and exchange that authority of saying, I need to buy 15 servers and it has to all go together, it has to be plug and play, then you're going to spend your time right there going, right, well, let's make sure, and make them calm about their job and the task that you have it under control. The PO will be tertiary at best.
That's absolutely right. Now, when we look at balancing the relationship and the task and the responsibility, it changes the dynamic of what we're doing. And when people feel valued, they will give you so much more. That's why I'll keep coming back to your question about how am I doing? Do we understand? Are we on the same page? Those check-ins, they matter because everybody assumes that that you're trying to get to that close, you're trying to get to that sale, you're trying to get to that outcome. But if you make the process better for the person, it has an equal, if not greater, impact on your long-term ability to serve, sell, and be engaged with that person.
Yeah, the first sale never is very profitable for you.
Right.
A lot of work and probably a loss by the time you're done with it. You want the residual business. One of the really interesting things I've discovered with, of course, from Pete with his podcast, got connected with Barry Katz. He's sort of the manager of all the comedians you've heard about at some point. He's been Chappelle's manager, Jay Moore's manager, Louis C.K., et cetera. And late in his career, he's taken to, kind of setting himself up as a guru that you can buy access to, and you can join his blueprint thing. And anyway, this is not an advertisement for Barry, but Barry put something into perspective for me about leadership that I feel like I've always operated under, but I didn't know that this was the word for it. And the word for it is safety. Your job as a leader is to provide safety for the people that you lead, period. Like everything falls under that. Nice. And, it also kind of, when you start to think, okay, leader as far as like top of the organization, sure. But leader as far as, am I driving a sales process? Leader as far as, am I showing up to a conversation and, trying to get us to a direction of something? I mean, I may not be in charge, but can I provide you with some safety so that you can do what you need to do? Going back to the food thing, right? Yeah. Going back to the food. Like that is a safety exercise. Yep. I'm going to give you something new that you haven't seen before, and you're gonna trust me that it's okay. And I'm going to make sure it's okay. I'm going to make sure you don't get poisoned. I'm going to make sure I don't give you the hard stuff first, so that you have a little, you have an ease into Danish food culture. They didn't bring out the eel right away. that was day two. You start with the Carlsberg for the alcohol, and then day three you're into the North Sea oil. Right. I mean, there's a there's sort of a, we're going to ease you into this. We're going to take care of you as you experience these things. And it's also, as a salesperson, hey, I'm going to ease you into what we do for you. And I'm going to take care of these things. And you're going to know that you can trust me to lead you through this. And you as a customer, hopefully you're going to make it easy for me, safe for me to explore what you do, tailor my product to what you're doing. And that's how we can have this good two-way thing. Even if nobody knows that that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. One of the areas we look at in the trust transformation book and program is, what are the measurable outcomes when you have high trust relationships or a high trust culture in the organization? And safety is one of them, right? And it comes in a variety of different areas. And safety is essentially the highest manifestation of trust, right? When you feel safe with somebody, you're objectively saying, I trust you with the most important things. And if you think about it and align this to, let's say, major corporate crises, and wonder how many of those corporate crises could have been averted if somebody felt safe enough to speak up and say, this is not going right, or we're making this wrong, or we put the wrong ingredient in, we need to recall it, rather than letting it go and not raising their voice because they would have felt like somebody was going to take retribution on them or whatever else might happen. So that is such an important aspect to this of making people feel safe. And I'll add one more thing, in that major brands are the beneficiaries of this aspect of trust, because you go to the store and you buy things automatically because you feel safe that the product's going to taste good, or that the car's going to start all the time, or that the clothes are going to wear for the right amount of time and give you a long life of whatever it is it's there to do. And so that cannot be understated in all of this.
Right. I discovered this week that I'm only 4 years late. I discovered this week that Uncle Ben's I knew the name was canceled, but I discovered that it was renamed to Ben's.
Right.
And it was by finding a package in the cupboard that said Ben's. Ben's. What's that?
Right.
And then I'm like, whoa, that's kind of familiar. That's actually the new name for Uncle Ben's. I had to look it up. Right.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird. But I mean, that is the kind of thing you're talking about there is, like you have a name change like that. And what does that do about the safety of that? What's that do about the expectation? I love Uncle Ben's rice. I mean, I absolutely love it. Now I'm trying to develop.
Brad, let me do my job real quick here.
Sure.
Anybody who loves what Roy is doing, there's the link right down below.
Thank you.
That link is going to unlock access to this trust transformation process and social media. Everything is there. And I love all the things that we're talking about. Obviously, Brad and I are vibing with you because there's an instant trust, but you and I know how to build trust. We know how to build these environments and stuff. You guys want to get some of this. If this seems like, hey, you know what, we could use with some of that. Man, whatever it is, every process involves trust between humans. And so it's a fantastic thing. So that's the link to go to down there below. I guess the thing I want to ask you next, actually what I want to do is I want to elevate what we're talking about here. Brad has talked about eating food and those kind of things. I have found that food is, Brad, you got to mute your mic, man. You can elevate your game by preparing food for someone else. If you're in Holland, if you're in whatever other place you're at, you're like, hey, why don't you come to my place, or I'll come to your place and I'm going to make you. I did this in Afghanistan on an earthen stove, cooking over cardboard. I made taco night for Afghan cops, right? And the other thing I would do is I would bring VIPs onto the camps in Afghanistan. And we're not going to search these guys. We're going to treat them like the dignitaries that they are. And then I'm going to take them to the chow hall and I'm going to blow their minds. Their minds are so blown, they're not even worried about whatever it is that they're worried about normally, because now they're in this Disneyland of things. And so we were so guilty all the time of eating everybody else's food. We show up and have 20 dudes. Yeah, you got to feed 20 people unexpected. And when you flip that around and you create value in terms of, hey, you're my guest, even though we're on your curve, you have the ability to really set a standard of putting a person exactly where they are supposed to be with you, and you're showing them like you're an important person in this world. You're a senior sheikh or whatever it's going to be, and that, I'm just, man, it's like, again, it's another kind of rocket fuel.
Pete, I had the opportunity back in, I want to say 2007, to take an economic development group from Orlando, where I live, to Dubai. I made 2 trips over there that year, one to kind of go over ahead of time and set the agenda, and the other was actually to bring the group over and spend a week there. And I remember coming home and talking to my wife, Kim, about the experience. And the most impressionable moment for me was going to the home of the deputy health minister. Was a lot of what we were there for was health and sciences, economic opportunities. But we were invited into the home of the deputy health minister of Dubai, and just sitting in his home, drinking the tea that his wife made and eating the cookies that his family made, and talking about the same stuff that I'm worried about at home with my kids and my family and my safety and my situation. It just, we get fed so much about people through media and other things. And until you sat down, to your point, broken bread, had a meal, shared a drink, and really just talked about life, you don't get past that very easily. And I look back on that experience, and it really reframed a lot of just how I engage people in my day-to-day life, and how I want to go out of my way to find and engage people who think differently, who believe differently, and who see life differently, because I'm going to learn more from them and through their experiences, and widen my perspective on the things that I can become educated on and about that I would lose out on otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking right now as I'm fighting my mouse here for control of the cursor. Sorry about that. You can see it on my face, I'm sure. A lot of this applies to, or would apply to, companies that work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
It's my experience has been that there's, obviously you don't have an office to go to every day, and that's a freedom, not a burden.
Right.
But over time, if you don't get together occasionally and remember that everybody's a human being, you don't actually meet with people. You don't actually go see a customer at a trade show or stuff like that. It's very easy to see it as a video game. And for everybody to start seeing it that way and just, muting their mic or, forgetting the humanity of people. And, I'm absolutely sure you make money telling people that. I'm sure of it. Like, it's such low-hanging fruit. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But we forget it.
I'll add a perspective on that. I have a co-author on my book, Dr. Omira Mansfield. She's an emergency physician with Advent Health, where we both worked as we put the initial program together in its current state. During the pandemic, we had taken probably up to maybe 1,000 people had gone through the program, and as things started to get really rough, particularly in the healthcare space, we went to our colleagues in the education team and others and said, "Hey, we want to host a call once a week with anyone that's gone through the program, just as a means to engage with them and give them an outlet to talk about their struggles, the challenges, some of the big relationship issues that come up when you go through a situation like that." And to the point you were making about, those moments that matter in that space, it was maybe one of the most rewarding times that I could have during such a difficult time, to really see people supporting each other just from the common thread of being humans going through that situation together. And so, providing that, when we have that opportunity to convene with people and to sit with people, that opportunity just for them to be able to talk about those things that matter most, are essential opportunities for us to be listeners, for us to be empathetic, and for us to just be available to that other human being.
Yeah. Something even with remote groups, just even having your cameras on. I mean, I know I know a lot of remote groups that work together. Nobody wants to have to comb their hair in the morning. Nobody wants to, even throw a hat on like I could have done. Right.
Like I did.
Right. Exactly. And nobody wants to, brush their teeth and, keep the missing ones fixed or whatever. Who knows what their deal is. But that can make a difference too. I mean, I had an experience where I worked for 8 years for a company. I met the boss 7 times. Times I saw him on camera, probably less than 20.
Wow.
And I think at the end, it was sort of the lack of humanity between the two of us that led to me leaving. Like, I'll be very honest with it, about that. But that is something you have to make an effort for, even if you're in person and stuff, be pleasant to people, like just be fun to be around. That helps. Right? If you're a miserable person, nobody's going to trust you. Nobody's going to want to do things with you. It's not going to happen. But,
the other lesson that those virtual group get-togethers enforced to me is, and you both have made this point, is while virtual can be more difficult, you can still engage people. You can still be engaging with people, and again, it all comes back to being intentional and saying, when I get on that call, I'm going to look for an opportunity to say, "Hey, Pete, how's your mom doing?" Or how are your kids doing? Or what's happening with such and such an issue I remember you brought up 2 weeks ago. And it takes a second. It may take 2 minutes out of the meeting. And then to your point about the boss checking in or being available or being on camera, the effort is not huge.
Right. And just to establish that, hey, you're a person here, you're paying attention for the 10 minutes or 2 hours that we're on the call.
Yeah,
that's helpful too. And even the distractions in the background and stuff too.
I put a link for the book right down there.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. Yeah. These kind of things about trust it's huge. Yeah, there's the book right there. When you're internally communicating, and now we're going to look from the top down. It's real easy to think you're doing a great job. One of the things I used to try to do was help companies understand their culture by helping them measure it. Culture and trust, these things are elemental. They go together. They form a very important part of a company. We're going to build a culture of whatever it's going to be. All right, well, let me go test. Let's go see if it's there. Because if you have an employee benefit program where hey, all of the top 10% get to come to Cabo with us. And if you have people not coming, you get a real clear message, and it's all too common. If the person who you're relying on to be a backbone for your business, if they don't know what the next step up for them is,
right,
and they're just hoping that they get recognized for a raise, well, you got problems. You got real problems because they don't have, they're supposed to bitch up to you. They're supposed to say, hey, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. You have to be able to withstand that, but also hey, we have to have you. You're important to us, and figure out what it is that they need. I hear a lot of bosses today saying people don't want to work. They don't want to work for you. You haven't figured out what it is that they need. If you're sliding $100 bill in their pocket, I'm telling you right now, that ain't enough, or whatever it is. However, and it's not just money, right? And so you have to spend time doing that trust building, pointing down in your organization, so that when I worked at CDW, the owner of the company was running around. He's like, having a great time. Yeah. I'm feeding you guys lunch. I was so pissed off at that guy because he had no clue how hard I was struggling in life. I was going through a divorce. I didn't have enough money. Couldn't make enough money. Even though I was calling on the phone like I was supposed to, I was just drowning every day. And to see that guy yucking it up, it pissed me off. I was so angry. And I never wanted to talk to that man again. And that's not what you want in a healthy company.
No, and to your point, little effort yields big outcomes. If it's consistently done and done with that authentic approach, and people can see when you're faking it. And a lot of times if an executive is far removed from the front line, they lose touch with that. And so I have a great appreciation for leaders who make that connection on a regular basis as best they can, and particularly in large organizations.
Yeah. You can't do it to everybody, but you
Right.
do need to slow down and do it to somebody. And,
Right.
often enough that you're like, man, I'm doing this too much. Then you're probably doing the right amount. Maybe do a couple more, because that human connection, it really matters. And you might get someone to believe in you more, because you can't lead someone you can't see, you can't talk to.
Yeah.
Do you
Brad,
feel-
I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry about that, Brad.
Sorry, no worries. Do you feel that you're preaching, and I don't mean preaching in a bad way, I mean, you're spreading your message, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel you're spreading your message more to individuals like, Pete and I testifying to you today, just like how we see similarities with what we've done? Or do you feel more like you're preaching more to organizations? I'm just curious about that, like how to get the message out and how to get it implemented.
It's a little of both. You can't get to the organization until an individual feels compelled to do it. And as I said earlier, it's one of those topics where people assume it. And so when you first bring it up, a lot of times you'll get this initial pushback that, trust is good for me. And then as you dig a little bit deeper, you start to see where the warts are and where the misses are and where it's not working. And ultimately it opens up that there may be some problems. There may be some issues. And there are few organizations, if any, that I've gone to through an executive, through a leader who I've been able to compel to do that, where the investment in the training, it always yields a great result. There are always things that happen that transform the culture because the relationships were transformed. So, for example, worked with a hospital where it had been sold, and the new owners came in and realized that they had big problems. It was failing. So the customer service was operating at the lowest 25%, and hospital-based infections were occurring in the lower 5%. So you didn't want to go there. After we went through the training and the leadership team adopted what we call a trust contract, which, think about your mission, your vision, and your values. What this becomes is what you express as an organization will be the priority for building high trust relationships. And they adopted it. A year later, they were in the upper 75% for customer satisfaction, upper 95% for hospital-based infections. And when the CEO came to see me, they had been 6 months with 0. And I asked him, I said, that's great. And I'm excited. And I would love to know that the program has a contribution to that. And there's some credit there. And I said, but how would you define that? He said, Roy, when trust improves, everything improves. The communication improves. People feel safe to speak up and say, hey, we got a problem over here and we can fix it. So instead of seeing the numbers fall off, we're able to fix it and keep the numbers where they need to be on both the clinical side as well as the interaction and the engagement side. And so
you're trusting being a primary, kind of a primary organizing improvement endeavor of this hospital. Pete and I have one that we can talk about with our parents, which both of our parents work for the phone company.
Okay.
And in the 80s, they had this quality initiative. And my dad was in management. I think, Pete, your mom was what was her role?
She, it depends on whatever it is. Who cares? She was
anyway, it was more of I would say it was not like an upper management role, but they all experienced this quality drive thing, which was like this multi-year thing. We're going to do quality. And it was BS, like total BS. And everybody knew it was BS, like a bad organizing principle. And it sounds like you actually have a good organizing principle that has, as you mentioned, like when trust goes up, everything improves. Like that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it is. In fact, I was working with a colleague on some of the ideas for how to position it, and that's exactly what she called it. She said, "This is a better operating system."
Yeah, that's nice.
There's a thing when you're in a corporation, and you and a partner, maybe even a friend, you guys are equally aligned. You're both at the same level, and you're both going for the same promotion. And when you walk into that meeting, when they're going to say yes, no to you, you probably should have a resignation letter, because if it isn't you, that company had better be ahead of you on, hey, listen, it can only be one person. You guys are both incredible. What we want to do for you is X. You didn't get it, because otherwise you need to hand that resignation letter directly over, because you just got into competition and lost, and you for sure can go promote yourself somewhere else. And you have to have the confidence to do that. People don't typically do that, but that is something that you have to think about if you're on the hiring side. Like, oh, we're going to hire this person for this incredible position. Yeah, but we don't want to lose Rhonda, because Rhonda's fucking incredible. And there was no difference between, we had to pick someone, so we picked this person for this hyper minor reason. Oh, they live closer, whatever, so they can be more on call, whatever that thing is. If you aren't prepared to communicate, like, hey, we're still trustworthy, then you're going to lose someone valuable, and they might gut you later on if they go to a competitor.
It's important to consistently and wholeheartedly manage expectations for people, right? When we talk about the aspect of dependability as it relates to trust, we use a guiding principle that says that you keep your promises and communicate consistently. And the reason it's two ideas in that one guiding principle is we're human. So regardless of how much we may promise to do something, we're going to make a mistake. We're going to screw something up. We're going to miss a deadline. Something's going to break and not get it there. And some things out of our control and some things within our control. As long as you're communicating, as long as you're engaging, as long as you're focusing on the relationship as much as the work, you can manage the expectation and recover from big mistakes.
Yeah. Tough to do, though. Like the next time we talk to someone who's like, my boss said they were going to do this in 6 months for me and they haven't done it. Right. Constantly you hear that. And it is so detrimental to the culture and the trust within your organization. Like, you have a CRM for your customers. Well, you better damn well talk to your employees and go, hey, we told you we're going to do this in six months. We're going to need another 6 months. In the meantime, why don't we do this? And find some way to say, this is, not everything works out. We all get that. But you have to communicate that misstep or that thing. If you just forget about it, man, you are bleeding production. You're bleeding trust. Your company's bleeding in a way that was preventable.
Yeah, absolutely. My last corporate gig was at the healthcare system that I was describing earlier, and I'll always appreciate the fact that during the most difficult times, I watched executive leaders step into that space and really lean into the idea of, we take care of our people first so that they can take care of the people that need them.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I want to wrap this up. Brad, I want you to go first. Give us your final thoughts.
Well, thank you for inviting me to co-pilot, Pete. This was interesting discussion. Of course, it brought up good memories of awkward ways that I've behaved. Trying to earn trust, because I always saw it as if I can't work with you, I can't work with you, right? So. But knowing that there's a framework, knowing there's a guy out there pushing it, and knowing that you're doing this as an organizational principle for real organizations, that's great. I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on and just talking trust with me. I can tell I'm passionate about it, and we talk about culture and all these things and how they mix together. I'd love to have you on. I'm definitely going to introduce you to Rob and Dreek, because you guys will dig each other's vibe. Yeah. But thanks for coming on the show. And just so people understand, this wasn't the smoothest booking, because things happen, the holidays happen, and oh my gosh, but yet we still managed to work through that. And I think that speaks to our professional capacity to deal with these things. It's like things happen. Yeah. We have to move at the pace we move at. And here we are. We just had this great conversation. So thanks for hanging in there with me on that. I really appreciate it. This is a fantastic thing. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I'm going to give you the last chance here, the last word.
Well, it's been a wonderful time, and an hour flew by. And so I'm excited to have been here. It's a great way to kind of end the week with some really positive and encouraging talk about trust. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. All right, everybody stand by. I'll be right back to you to say goodbye. Everybody else, have a great weekend. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the